If nothing excites you anymore, do not assume life has become empty. Assume your attention, energy, and meaning have been pulled away from where they belong. When people say that nothing feels exciting anymore, they often believe something is wrong with their life. But most of the time, the issue is not life itself, it is the condition of the mind. Today, the mind is constantly overstimulated. From the moment you wake up, you are exposed to noise, notifications, messages, videos, opinions, entertainment, information without pause. The brain was never designed to process this much input without rest, so it adapts. And adaptation, while useful for survival, comes with a cost. The mind works on contrast. Silence makes sound meaningful. Stillness makes movement powerful. But when the mind is continuously bombarded with stimulation, there is no contrast left. Everything blends into the same dull background. What once felt exciting now feels normal. What once felt meaningful now feels flat. This is not because life has lost its value, but because the nervous system has raised its threshold. It now requires more intensity to feel anything at all. This is why simple things stop bringing joy. A conversation feels shallow, achievements feel empty. Even rest does not feel restful anymore. The mind is tired, but it does not know how to stop. It keeps seeking more input, believing stimulation will fix the numbness, when in reality, stimulation is the cause of it. This creates a loop. The more overstimulated you become, the less you feel. The less you feel, the more stimulation you seek. Understand this clearly. Numbness is not a lack of emotion. It is an overload of unprocessed input. The mind is not calm enough to register subtle experiences. It cannot feel depth because it has been trained only to respond to extremes. Fast content, loud emotions, constant novelty, these train the brain to crave intensity rather than meaning. Over time, the ability to appreciate slow progress, quiet moments, and inner satisfaction weakens. This is why discipline is not punishment, it is medicine. When you intentionally reduce stimulation, you begin to lower the threshold again. When you allow boredom to exist without escaping it, the mind starts to regain sensitivity. At first, this feels uncomfortable. Silence feels loud. Stillness feels restless. But if you stay, something changes. The nervous system begins to settle. Attention sharpens. Simple experiences slowly regain color. Excitement does not return as fireworks. It returns as clarity. You begin to notice things again. Your breath feels deeper. Your work feels more intentional. Conversations feel more real. You are no longer chasing excitement. You are creating the conditions for aliveness. This is an important distinction. Excitement is not something you hunt. It is something that emerges when the mind is healthy. Education is not only about learning more, but about unlearning excess. Teaching the mind when to engage and when to rest. Training attention instead of scattering it. When stimulation is reduced, presence increases. And presence is where meaning lives. Without presence, even the greatest experiences feel empty. With presence, even the smallest task can feel alive. So if nothing feels exciting anymore, do not immediately search for something new. First, ask what you have allowed to overwhelm your mind. Remove the unnecessary noise. Create space. Let the mind breathe again. When the mind becomes quiet enough, life will start speaking to you once more. Another reason nothing feels exciting anymore is not because life lacks opportunity, but because many people are no longer living with direction. Instead of choosing their actions, they are responding to everything around them. The day begins not with intention, but with reaction. A message pulls the attention. A demand dictates the next move. An expectation decides the priority. Slowly, without realizing it, life stops being something you lead and becomes something you manage. When you live reactively, your energy is constantly leaking. You are always one step behind, adjusting, catching up, responding. There is no space to ask, Is this aligned with what matters to me? The mind becomes trained to respond quickly, rather than to choose wisely. Over time, this creates a quiet disconnect between your actions and your values. You may be busy all day, yet feel strangely empty at night. Not because you did nothing, but because what you did was not truly yours. Excitement comes from alignment. When what you do reflects who you are, energy flows naturally. But when your actions are dictated by pressure, comparison, or fear of falling behind, that energy turns into tension. You may achieve things, but they do not satisfy. You may move forward, but you do not feel progress. This is not failure, it is misdirection. Many people confuse purpose with a grand mission. They believe purpose must be dramatic or extraordinary. In truth, purpose is simply clarity. It is knowing why you are doing what you are doing. Even small actions feel meaningful when they are intentional. Even difficult work feels energizing when it is chosen. But when life is lived in constant reaction, meaning fades, and with it, excitement. Look closely at your daily behavior. How much of it is driven by urgency that is not yours? How often do you say yes without reflection? How often do you measure yourself against others instead of your own standards? Each time you act without intention, you move a little further away from yourself. And the further you drift, the harder it becomes to feel alive. Education of the mind begins with reclaiming choice. This does not mean controlling everything. It means pausing before reacting. It means creating space between stimulus and response. In that space, you regain authorship of your life. You begin to act from principle instead of impulse. This is where excitement quietly returns, not as pleasure, but as inner stability. When you choose your actions consciously, your energy stops scattering. Focus sharpens, effort feels clean instead of heavy. Even routine tasks carry weight because they serve a direction. This is why disciplined people often appear calm and fulfilled. They are not driven by chaos, they are guided by clarity. A reactive life feels fast but goes nowhere. An intentional life may feel slower, but it moves forward. And forward movement, when it is aligned, creates a deep sense of engagement. You are no longer chasing excitement, you are participating in your own life. If you want excitement to return, stop asking what will make you feel something and start asking what deserves your energy. The moment you begin living by choice instead of reaction, life starts to feel like it belongs to you again. There is another quiet reason why excitement disappears from life, and it is often misunderstood. Many people believe that comfort is the reward for hard work, and to a certain extent that is true. But when comfort becomes the default state, it slowly weakens the human spirit. The body and the mind are designed to adapt, to struggle, to overcome. Without resistance, they begin to soften in ways that are not healthy. When everything is easy, nothing feels valuable. When there is no challenge, there is no growth. And without growth, there is no sense of aliveness. Excitement is not born from ease, it is born from engagement. It comes from moving towards something difficult and discovering that you are capable of more than you believed. When life removes that friction, the nervous system becomes understimulated. You are safe, but you are not awake. Look at how modern life is structured. Comfort is available at every moment. Food without effort, entertainment without waiting, information without thinking, movement without necessity. Over time, the mind begins to expect ease as normal. The moment something requires effort, resistance appears. Avoidance replaces action. Slowly, strength is traded for convenience. This is why people can feel tired despite doing very little. The exhaustion does not come from effort, it comes from stagnation. Energy that is not used turns inward and becomes restlessness. The body wants movement. The mind wants challenge. When these needs are ignored, discomfort still exists, but it expresses itself as boredom, irritability, and a sense of emptiness. Voluntary discomfort is not about suffering. It is about reminding yourself that you are alive. Choosing to do what is difficult when it is unnecessary builds inner strength. Training when you could rest. focusing when you could distract yourself, staying present when escape is available. These small acts reawaken the nervous system. They create contrast again. When you expose yourself to challenge intentionally, your perception changes. Simple things regain value. Rest feels earned. Progress feels real. You begin to trust yourself more because you are keeping promises to your own growth. That trust generates quiet excitement, not loud enthusiasm, but a steady sense of forward motion. Education teaches us that muscles grow through resistance, but we forget that the same law applies to character. Without challenge, discipline fades. Without discipline, confidence weakens. And without confidence, life feels small. Comfort, when unchecked, shrinks the world. This is why excitement often returns when people commit to something demanding, a craft, a practice, a responsibility that cannot be skipped. Structure creates meaning. Resistance creates engagement. Through effort, the mind sharpens and the body remembers its strength. Do not wait for life to challenge you. Choose challenge while you are able. The goal is not hardship but vitality. When you train yourself to face difficulty calmly, excitement returns not as pleasure, but as respect for your own capacity. A comfortable life may keep you safe, but a challenging life makes you feel alive. Another reason excitement disappears is not visible on the surface because it lives beneath behavior, beneath routine, beneath words. It is the quiet W8 of unresolved emotion. Many people carry disappointment, frustration, grief, or resentment without realizing how much energy it consumes. They continue functioning, working, and interacting, but a large part of their inner capacity is occupied by what has never been processed. When emotions are not acknowledged, they do not disappear. They remain stored in the nervous system. The mind becomes busy holding them down, and this effort is exhausting. Over time, this inner tension reduces the ability to feel anything fully. Joy, curiosity, and excitement require openness, but when the system is overloaded, it closes to protect itself. This is why some people feel numb rather than sad. Numbness is often mistaken for strength, but it is usually a sign of fatigue. The mind has learned that feeling deeply is unsafe or overwhelming, so it does everything equally. Pain is reduced, but so is pleasure. Excitement fades not because life has lost meaning, but because the system does not have the capacity to receive it. Stress that is never released turns into background noise. You may not consciously think about it, but it shapes your posture, your breathing, your reactions. It keeps the body in a subtle state of defense. In this state, energy is used for survival, not for exploration or creativity. Excitement cannot exist where the nervous system feels threatened or burdened. Many people believe that moving on means forgetting. In reality, moving on means integrating. Education of the self requires learning how to sit with discomfort without judgment, allowing emotions to surface without immediately trying to fix them. When you create space to feel, you reclaim energy that was being used to suppress. This does not require dramatic expression, it requires honesty, noticing tension in the body, noticing resistance in the mind, acknowledging where expectations were not met, where effort was not recognized, where loss was not honored. When emotions are seen clearly, they begin to loosen their grip. As emotional weight lifts, attention becomes lighter, breathing deepens. The world feels less heavy. This is when excitement slowly returns, not as stimulation but as availability. You are present enough to be touched by experience again. Education teaches us to solve problems but rarely teaches us to process emotion. Yet emotional clarity is foundational. Without it, motivation feels forced. With it, action feels natural. You no longer push yourself forward. You allow energy to move freely. Excitement is not something you add to your life. It is something that emerges when internal resistance is removed. When unresolved emotions are acknowledged and integrated, the mind regains space. And in that space, curiosity, engagement, and meaning naturally arise. When you stop carrying what no longer needs to be carried, You make room for life to move through you again. Another reason excitement fades is not because life has become empty, but because attention has become divided. The modern mind is rarely focused on one thing at a time. It jumps from thought to thought, screen to screen, task to task. While the body is in one place, the mind is somewhere else. And when attention is scattered, experience becomes shallow. Excitement requires depth. It comes from being fully engaged with what is in front of you. But when attention is constantly interrupted, nothing is experienced long enough to matter. Even meaningful moments pass without leaving a trace. The mind touches everything briefly but never stays, so nothing feels real. Many people believe multitasking makes them productive. In reality, it weakens perception. Each switch of attention carries a cost. Energy is lost in transition. Over time, the mind becomes restless, unable to settle. When the mind cannot settle, it cannot feel, and when it cannot feel, excitement disappears. Look closely at how often your attention is pulled away. A notification interrupts a thought. A memory interrupts a conversation. A comparison interrupts satisfaction. Each interruption fragments the moment. The result is a constant sense of being slightly disconnected from your own life. Education of the mind begins with training attention, not forcing it but guiding it, learning to stay with one task, one breath, one conversation until it is complete. This is not about efficiency, it is about presence. Presence is what gives weight to experience. When attention is focused, time changes, minutes fade, fuller. Effort feels purposeful, even silence feels rich. This is because the mind is no longer divided. All of your energy is available in one place. In that state, even simple activities carry meaning. Scattered attention also weakens memory. When you are not fully present, experiences do not integrate. Days blur together. Life feels repetitive not because it is, but because you were never truly there to experience it. Excitement fades when nothing stands out. Training attention is a discipline. It requires reducing unnecessary inputs, creating boundaries, choosing depth over quantity. At first, the mind resists. It craves stimulation. But if you remain steady, attention strengthens. And as attention strengthens, sensitivity returns. This is why people often rediscover excitement when they commit to focused practice. Reading without interruption, training without distraction, listening without preparing the next response. In these moments, life slows down and meaning reappears. Excitement is not loud, it is quiet engagement. It is the feeling of being fully involved in what you are doing. When attention is gathered instead of scattered, life no longer feels distant. It feels close, vivid, and alive. Where your attention goes, your life follows. The final reason nothing feels exciting anymore is subtle, but it is perhaps the most important. Many people have replaced meaning with stimulation. They are not looking for depth, they are looking for feeling. They are not asking why something matters. They are asking whether it entertains. Over time, this shift changes how the mind engages with life. Stimulation is quick, it gives an instant response. A rush, a distraction, a temporary lift. But it fades just as quickly. Meaning is slower. It requires commitment, patience, and responsibility. It does not always feel good in the moment, but it creates lasting fulfillment. When stimulation becomes the primary goal, excitement becomes fragile. It depends on novelty. The moment something becomes familiar, it loses its effect. This is why people constantly seek something new, a new goal, a new place, a new identity. They believe excitement lives in change. But without meaning, change becomes escape. The mind jumps forward, hoping the next experience will finally provide what the last one could not. Each time, the satisfaction is shorter. The emptiness grows deeper. Meaning comes from contribution, from progress, from mastery. It comes from investing energy into something larger than immediate pleasure. When you work towards something that matters, excitement is not dramatic, but it is steady. It shows up as commitment, as pride in effort, as a quiet sense that your actions are building something real. Education teaches us to ask better questions. Not how does this make me feel, but what does this develop in me? Not is this exciting, but is this meaningful? When you shift the question, your relationship with life changes. You stop consuming experiences and start participating in them. Stimulation asks nothing of you, meaning demands something, and it is in that demand that excitement gains depth. Effort becomes purposeful. Struggle becomes acceptable. Even failure feels instructive. You are no longer chasing a feeling, you are walking a path. This is why excitement rooted in meaning does not disappear when life becomes difficult. In fact, it often grows stronger. Challenges no longer threaten your engagement, they reinforce it. You understand why you are there. You know what you are building. When people say they feel bored with life, it is rarely because life lacks options. It is because they have not committed to anything deeply enough for it to matter. Depth creates richness. Without depth, everything remains surface level, and surface level experiences cannot sustain excitement. Meaning does not arrive by accident. It is chosen. It is built through consistent action, aligned values, and responsibility. When you commit to something meaningful, life organizes itself around that commitment. Distractions lose power. Stimulation loses appeal. What remains is focus. Excitement returns when life is no longer about feeling something but about becoming someone.